Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction horror TV series named Sweet Home Season 3. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In the previous season, the number of survivors from Green Home had dwindled significantly. Even the former firefighter from the Special Forces, Seo, was turned into a monster by her own daughter. Having lost her sanity and normal cognitive functions, the protagonist, Cha, wanted to end her suffering, but his body was taken over by another consciousness. Fortunately, Yu's unwavering dedication successfully awakened him. Meanwhile, the mysterious young man, Shady, having possessed Wook's body, took control of Crow Island with the intent of transforming all humans into the infected. He also located Dr. Lim's first experimental subject. It's Seo's fiancé. This season kicks off with a massive secret. Shady is, in fact, Seo's fiancé. Long ago, just as Dr. Lim was about to experiment on Seo's fiancé, the latter's intense will to survive allowed him to expel the viral entity, successfully separating the monster from the human body. This monster then entered the original Shady's body before later moving into Wook's. Therefore, the Shady we know is a part of Seo's fiancé, and the true monster mutated from the virus. Dr. Lim couldn't understand why the test number 1 would return to a place he despised. Number 1 brought out a MH3 mutant, and soon after, the sergeant was dragged before them, his 3 subordinates hanging in midair. One of number 1's men handed the sergeant a gun, telling him to choose one person to save. Dr. Lim wondered about the purpose of this spectacle. The MH3 mutant explained that stimulating a person's desires is the first stage in creating a monster. As they spoke, the sergeant raised the pistol and aimed it at the sidekick infectee behind him, but in the next second, the rope holding one of his corporals snapped, and the man fell to his death. If the sergeant refused to cooperate, his remaining 2 subordinates would meet the same fate. Ultimately, the sergeant raised the gun again, and the young corporal closed his eyes as he stared down the barrel. Unexpectedly, the sergeant shot the rope, then sprinted and leaped into the corpse pit below, catching his falling comrade. Of course, their landing awakened the slumbering monsters in the pit, which swarmed them like zombies. The sergeant tensed his arms and fired several shots, quickly running out of bullets. He was forced to use the gun as a club, fighting desperately alongside his subordinate in what had turned the small stone pit into a gladiatorial arena. Having enjoyed the show, number 1 ordered his sidekick to kill them. However, a muscle man suddenly appeared with a weapon. Ignoring the sidekick girl's attempts to stop him, he charged into the monster-infested pit. By this time, 1 corporal had already been killed by the monsters. An enraged muscle man unleashed his flamethrower in a wild frenzy, but was quickly overwhelmed and tackled by a monster. The sidekick girl, who had been watching, finally made her move, but instead of following Shady's orders, she intervened to protect the muscle man from harm. Dr. Lim, who was returning, happened to witness this scene and took the sidekick girl to meet number 1 at the stadium. Inside the stadium, Chief G was leading her daughter to an office. In the last season, Chief G's daughter had helped her mother sabotage the electrical wires but was caught by Wook after dropping a ring. Chief G had shown no intention of saving her then. Chief G's daughter didn't understand why her mother was seeking her out now. Chief G explained that this way led to an exit and urged her to hurry if she didn't want to be recaptured. She dragged her terrified daughter forward, stopping in a dark space. A cold flashlight beam illuminated the area above their heads, revealing a monster perched there. Upon seeing it, Chief G began to cry and scream in a chicken voice. The daughter seized the opportunity, grabbed a club, and knocked her unconscious. The commotion quickly attracted the attention of Wook. Meanwhile, Cha and Yu were still searching for Seo. At the end of the last season, Cha revealed he could see the desires of monsters, but he had never seen into one as deeply as Seo's. He believed that if he could make Seo realize it was all an illusion, he might be able to restore her sanity. Although Yu wanted to help, her smelly presence would only distract Cha, so they decided to split up. Cha leaped into a fissure in the ground and successfully found and entered Seo's consciousness. Inside, 2 versions of Seo were in an intense struggle, torn over whether to kill her monster daughter, Yisu. Influenced by her internal conflict, Seo's physical body began to convulse, forcing Cha to hold her sexy body down tightly. Elsewhere, the young soldier Park, who had been sent away by Yu, still wanted to go back to her, but he knew his presence would make him a third wheel during her smelly reunion with her old flame. As Park hesitated, his biggest fan, Hani, caught up to him. They drove off to find Yu, planning to wait with her for Cha. A monster suddenly appeared, and the three of them hid behind their vehicle. Just then, Seo's screams echoed from the fissure in the road, and the monster immediately crawled inside. At that moment, Cha was deep within Seo's consciousness and couldn't be disturbed. Park and Yunyu risked entering the deep pit. They used Molotov cocktails to deter the monster and keep it away from Cha and Seo. This tactic couldn't last long, as the monster's thrashing caused the fire to spread, burning through one of their ropes. Seeing this, Park quickly tied the intact rope around Yunyu and signaled Hani on the surface to pull her up, staying behind to deal with the monster himself. His ammunition was running low. Their only hope was for Cha to awaken Seo quickly. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Cha regained consciousness. He obliterated the monster with a single wing strike and brought both Park and Yunyu safely back to the surface. Seo had finally overcome her inner demons and returned to her human form. It was as if she had woken from a chaotic dream. Seo cut her wrist and saw that the wound didn't heal instantly, proving she was human again. However, Cha had exhausted himself saving her and fell into a coma, unable to retract his half-formed wing. Unable to wait for him to wake up, Seo decided to find her daughter first. She knew Yisu didn't trust humans and would surely turn others into monsters. Seo deduced that Yisu would most likely go to the stadium and immediately set off to prevent a tragedy. Elsewhere, Hani's father, who had been drugged by his adopted daughter, finally woke up. He had killed Hani's monster-fied parents, and they had made a pact that if one of them turned, the other would kill them. But Seo's recovery gave Hani hope that monsters could turn back, so this time, she refused to follow her adoptive father's wishes and handcuffed him inside a car. The scene shifts back to Number 1 and his group, who have stopped to refuel. Dr. Lim asked Number 1 why he was going to the stadium. He replied that when Seo had come to Crow Island, she saw the experimental subjects in the vats and assumed he was dead. Seeing she was pregnant, Number 1 gave her a small gift so he could recognize the child later. He was now going to the stadium to find Yisu. As they prepared to leave, they caught a shifty-looking man with glasses. He had been hiding behind a giant cocoon and seemed to have been there for a long time. Number 1 dragged him into their vehicle. On the way, Dr. Lim asked the man what the cocoon was, but he couldn't explain it, only that monsters wouldn't attack the cocoon, which was how he had stayed alive by hiding next to it. At the same time in the stadium, Wook followed the sound to a hidden room where he found Chief Ji, her daughter, and the monster. Through interrogation, he learned the monster was Chief Ji's son. Years ago, when Chief Ji's family sought refuge at the safe zone, her son began showing symptoms. Back then, soldiers would kill all infected individuals. To save her son, Chief Ji hid him in that secret room and cared for him in secret. When the Crow platoon later expelled those with symptoms, she pretended to offer help, luring them through a secret passage into the basement to feed Chief Ji's son. Chief Ji felt no guilt, believing no parent could let their child die. Although Chief Ji's son hadn't shown any aggression, the Crow platoon couldn't ignore the situation. Wook left the decision to Chief Ji, telling her to think it over. Because the stadium's power had not been fully restored, the platoon had shut down some of the lighting and exhaust fans. Unbeknownst to them, this decision gave Yisu an opportunity. She slipped into the stadium through a stopped exhaust fan. Soon after entering, she saw a boy being bullied. The boy said that if he became a monster, he would kill them all. This was music to Yisu's ears. Just as she was about to act, Chief Ji's daughter appeared. Seeing the two kids huddled in a corner, she called them over to leave with her. The fish-selling auntie noticed Yisu was a new face and had no adult with her, so she let the girl stay with her for the night. At that moment, Wook learned that a search team had returned, but there was only one vehicle. He immediately led his men to guard the entrance. However, the only familiar face in the car was Dr. Lim. The sergeant and his subordinate were nowhere to be seen. Number 1 wasted no words and blasted through the stadium's main gate. Yisu seemed to sense her father's presence. Just as a soldier was about to pull the trigger, a tentacle pierced his arm. Seeing this, Wook stepped forward to negotiate. He noticed the sidekick girl was wearing the muscle man's jacket. Knowing the Crow platoon was no match for special infectees, he asked Number 1 what he wanted. The latter demanded that all the children be gathered. The MH3 mutant stitched up the injured soldier's wound. Everyone wanted to know if the sergeant was okay, but Dr. Lim gave no clear answer. Fortunately, the sergeant was still alive. For reasons unknown, Dr. Lim had helped both him and the muscle man. Because the muscle man had been infected by a monster and shared the same blood type as the sergeant, Dr. Lim set up a makeshift blood transfusion, sacrificing the muscle man to save the sergeant. Just then, the MH3 mutant made an announcement over the broadcast system. From now on, the Crow platoon would be treated the same as survivors. The ban on entering or leaving the stadium would remain, but they would offer better conditions for those with symptoms. They would no longer have to live in hiding and could move freely within the stadium because monsterization would elevate humanity to the next level. Dr. Lim knew Wook was also infected and had promised in the previous season to bring back a special drug to turn him into a special infectee. However, he had hidden the drug inside the sidekick girl, making it difficult to retrieve. At this moment, someone else was also suffering from the torment of monsterization. Hani, who had been hiding her condition. Her father, fully aware of this, had not killed her. Suddenly, she felt dizzy, assuming it was the lingering effects of the drug she had used on him. She went outside to find an antidote for her adoptive father. Unbeknownst to her, her father was also infected. While she was gone, he dislocated his wrist, escaped the handcuffs, and limped away. When Hani returned, she found only a trail of blood leading to a nearby car where her father was struggling against his impending transformation. She ran into a nearby store and, ignoring Yunyu's protests, tried to forcibly wake Cha to save her father. But the frenzied father soon attracted other monsters, forcing everyone to flee. Yunyu told Park to get Hani while she tried to wake Cha. The man, using his last shred of sanity, begged Hani to kill him, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. He was forced to drive his car into a fuel tank, immolating himself. The massive explosion attracted nearby monsters. Park fought desperately to protect Hani, while Unyu finally managed to wake Cha, only to realize she had awakened his other personality. Just as a large-eyed monster was about to devour Park, the dark Cha muttered about the noise, rushed out, and obliterated it with a single wing strike. He then grabbed Park, preparing to kill him too. Unyu raced upstairs. She had a general anesthetic in her cabinet. She managed to inject Cha just in time. The next day, she took the anesthetic, tied up Cha, and prepared to leave. Yunyu planned to head to the stadium to regroup with Seo, but before they could depart, the second personality, the dark Cha, woke up. Despite his aggressive nature, Unyu wasn't afraid. It was still Cha's body, and no matter what happened, Cha would never harm her. Even his other personality couldn't bring itself to attack her. The dark Cha seemed amused by this and agreed to go with her, but gave her a 3-day deadline. If she couldn't awaken Cha by then, he would ensure that personality never returned. If she succeeded, he would let Cha go. Elsewhere, the sergeant, having recovered his strength, was preparing to leave Crow Island when he unexpectedly found Yunyu's monsterized brother, Lee. Lee begged the sergeant to kill him, but seeing that Lee still possessed his sanity, the sergeant carried him to his vehicle and drove away. Meanwhile, Wook went to untie Chief G. Years ago, she and her husband had hidden their son in the stadium. Even knowing they would eventually be discovered, they still risked taking in later survivors. Wook knew Chief G was a good person. He begged her to reveal the location of the exit from the uncharted area to save the survivors one more time. Just as he finished speaking, Seo arrived at the stadium. She followed Dr. Lim into the lab and immediately beat him senseless. Dr. Lim told her that her husband had come looking for the child. Whether she believed it or not, he warned her to find the child before number 1 did. Seo had personally seen her husband turned into a specimen and refused to believe he was alive. Besides, strictly speaking, number 1 was no longer the fiancé she knew. Just then, footsteps approached. Number 1 entered to speak with the doctor while Seo hid behind the lab door, eavesdropping. Dr. Lim deliberately probed, asking number 1 why he went to Green Home when he was in Shady's body. The latter replied that his memories hadn't returned yet and he was merely following his instincts. In retrospect, he believed he was trying to find Seo. Number 1 lamented that it was a good thing he didn't kill her back then, or he would never have met his child. Hearing this, Seo peeked out to see what her husband looked like now. Unexpectedly, number 1 suddenly revealed his purpose for finding Yisu. She would become the most perfect being and his next vessel. This was why he needed Dr. Lim to find a way for him to leave Wook's body. Soon after, number 1 began screening the children and quickly recognized Yisu in the crowd. Meanwhile, the sergeant was driving with Lee. He searched for communication equipment in an abandoned car on the roadside, but was surprised to see Lee climb out of the car and stumble into a nearby church, followed by another monster. The sergeant rushed in to save him. He noticed a wound on Lee's neck, identical to the ones on his subordinates, and assumed it was also inflicted by a special infectee. But he couldn't understand why they didn't kill Lee and instead locked him up. The sergeant had no time for riddles, as another monster was hiding in the church. But Lee told him that as long as he didn't leave, he would be safe. Just then, the monster appeared. The sergeant hid and fired at it. Suddenly, a tentacle shot out of Lee's throat, and he transformed into a giant cocoon right before the sergeant's eyes. Upon seeing the cocoon, the monster immediately ceased its movements. Back at the stadium, Seo was secretly following number 1, watching how he was trying to deceive Yisu. At that moment, the MH3 mutant intercepted a signal from the sergeant. This meant the sidekick girl had defied orders and hadn't killed everyone on Crow Island. Number 1 gave the sidekick girl a chance to redeem herself. She was to guard the stadium gate and kill the sergeant if he appeared, and she had to do it in front of everyone. Then, Number 1 took Yisu out for a drive. A worried MH3 mutant had the sidekick man follow them. Elsewhere, Wook obtained maps of the stadium and the uncharted area. After completing this task, Chief G locked herself in the basement, perhaps believing this was the only way to atone for her past sins. During this time, the Dark Cha adapted well. He not only found new clothes and cut his hair, but even snatched someone's canned ham. However, Hani was suffering from withdrawal after stopping her medication. Yunyu couldn't bear to watch and searched for medicine for her. Park took the opportunity to ask the Dark Cha if he was the one who helped Yunyu kill Chief G's husband. The Dark Cha flatly denied it, saying Cha did it and it had nothing to do with him. Mid-sentence, they realized Yunyu was gone. Meanwhile, Number 1 had taken Yisu to a high vantage point. Knowing monsters wouldn't harm the child, he challenged her to demonstrate her power, promising to grant any wish if she could. Yisu placed her hand on the ground and gently awakened the slumbering monsters. The effects reached even Yunyu's location, as a massive flock of birds burst from the forest and the ground shook, revealing a colossal monster. Yisu truly possessed unimaginable power. The unlucky Yunyu, however, was now being chased by the awakened monster. Although the Dark Cha didn't want to get involved, he couldn't resist his body's instinct. Before he could find Yunyu, the nearby sidekick man suddenly charged out and began slaughtering monsters. Yisu's energy burst had agitated him. Yunyu took the chance to hide on a metal frame and watch from a distance. This monster must have been a fitness fanatic in his past life, given his muscles, size, and deep love for protein. However, the Dark Cha tore him to shreds without much effort. The sidekick man saw this unfamiliar special infectee and wanted to make friends, but the next second, the Dark Cha severed his right hand. The sidekick man only recognized the large wing after a moment, realizing the person before him was Cha. The Dark Cha grabbed him and demanded to know where Number 1 was. The sidekick man quickly confessed that his boss was at the stadium looking for his child. Hearing this, the Dark Cha dragged him away. Elsewhere, Number 1 returned to the stadium with Yisu. He saw 3 strangers blocking the entrance, claiming to be looking for their kin. Number 1 tore them to pieces. Wook confronted him, asking why he would kill people so casually. Number 1 replied that those 3 weren't people, just dregs. He then asked Yisu what her wish was. She found the guys who had bullied the boy and, using her father's intimidating presence, took back their baseball. As Yisu was about to return the ball to the boy, Seo suddenly embraced her. Yisu didn't understand. She had turned her mother into a monster, so why was she human now? If Seo were also a monster, she wouldn't hate her. Seo felt nothing but guilt. She could only apologize repeatedly to her daughter and asked her to leave with her. Seo gave Yisu time to think, telling her to meet at the ventilation duct if she was willing to give her mother a chance. Meanwhile, Wook took his subordinate and tried to leave the stadium, but the MH3 mutant stopped them, stating that ordinary people were not allowed to come and go freely and violators would be punished. He then ordered the sidekick girl to act. Wook grabbed her GPS tentacle and revealed his rapidly healing wound, exposing his identity as an infected person. Since the MH3 mutant had said those with symptoms could move freely, Wook immediately went to find Dr. Lim, only to discover Seo had locked him in the pharmacy. True to his nature, Dr. Lim, once freed, immediately began his research on the cocoon from the suitcase, desperate to find out what it was. At the same time, Lee had emerged from the giant cocoon. Aside from darker eye circles, he appeared completely human. However, the monster in the church was terrified of him, leaving the sergeant utterly bewildered. Lee explained that the giant cocoon is called a heart, and after returning to the heart, they can be reborn. However, the special infectees disrupted this order. They fear the existence of people like Lee, calling them dregs. Number 1 knew that the dregs were most vulnerable when returning to the heart, and he kept Lee alive only to find the dregs' sanctuary and eliminate them all. The sergeant informed him that those special infectees were currently at the stadium, and the two prepared to head there together. Along the way, the sergeant realized that Lee was not only immortal, but also a remarkably fast learner. However, he seemed to have abandoned all human emotions, living only to find and gather the new humans reborn from the heart. Cutting back to Number 1. After learning the sergeant was symptomatic, he showed him the cocoons formed by the 3 dregs. When Number 1 was on Crow Island, a large number of these beings had come looking for something. Annoyed, he killed them all, only to find they could turn into cocoons and be reborn. The sergeant grasped the key point. The next stage after becoming a monster was to become an immortal human. Just then, a dreg was reborn from a cocoon. Since these dregs came to the stadium looking for their kin, it meant their kind was also here. The sergeant immediately thought of Chief G's son in the basement, but didn't tell number one, considering it a way to repay Chief G. Meanwhile, Yunyu knew the Dark Cha was going to the stadium to settle scores with number one. Fearing for the survivors there, she urged Park and Hani to get moving. The Dark Cha was dragging the sidekick man along. He underestimated the small fry and let his guard down, allowing the sidekick man to get the jump on him. The Dark Cha was frozen in place, temporarily immobilized. Back at the stadium, the boy returned to his little nook and saw the baseball. He went to thank Yisu but found her confiding in a doll, torn about whether to leave with her mother. The boy's parents had died long ago in the apocalypse, and he knew having a mother was precious. He advised Yisu not to be stubborn and to go find her mom. He then gave her a badge he had hidden inside the baseball, a memento from his sister, hoping she would keep it with her. Ultimately, the girl went to the ventilation duct, planning to leave with Seo, but number one suddenly appeared. Seo was nearly deceived by his sweet talk, but quickly pulled out a dagger and stabbed him in the eye. She told Yisu to run and desperately held number one back to buy her daughter time. But number one severed Seo's arm and dragged the girl back with a tentacle. He finally dropped his benevolent facade, revealing his greedy and foul, true nature. Seo shot number one with her remaining arm and dragged her body towards her daughter. But in the next second, number one impaled her. With her last breath, Seo urged Yisu to run before dying in her daughter's arms. Number one grabbed the girl, but he couldn't enter her body. Enraged, he could only lock her up for the time being. The sidekick man, after running all night, was caught by the Dark Cha again. Thanks to the trail of blood he left, Yunyu and the others were able to keep up. Just then, Hani climbed to the surface, saying she heard an approaching vehicle. The next moment, Yunyu's car passed by her brother's, but his eyes showed no hint of recognition. The sergeant continued driving and soon encountered the Dark Cha. His first instinct upon seeing a special infectee was to slam on the accelerator and ram him. The sergeant approached the sidekick man with murderous intent, wanting to avenge his subordinates. The unfortunate Dark Cha got his wings stuck in the car and couldn't pull it out immediately. Seeing Lee, he was instantly reminded of their days at Greenhome. The two began fighting inside the bus, while a desperate Yunyu tried to get her brother's attention. The Dark Cha quickly noticed Lee was much faster, no longer the same glasses-wearing kid from before, but he wasn't the old Cha either, and refused to be used by Lee again. As they fought fiercely, Yunyu finally caught up, unable to believe her brother was alive. Even the Dark Cha was disgusted by Lee's cold indifference towards Yunyu. He retracted his chicken wing, preparing to teach Lee a lesson himself. While those two brawled in the bus, the sergeant was pummeling the sidekick man, shouting a comrade's name with every shot and punch. The sidekick man tried a sneak attack but was spotted by Park. However, bullets couldn't kill a special infectee. Park pulled the enraged sergeant to safety. The sidekick man, holding a grudge, went after the Dark Cha for revenge. He used his ultimate ability to weld the bus shut, trapping Lee and Cha together. It seemed he was secretly a shipper, and after locking the two male leads together, he left, satisfied. Molten metal began to drip down. The Dark Cha reluctantly shielded Lee with his chicken wing and punched a hole in the roof. As they figured out how to escape, the sergeant forcibly took Unyu and the others, warning them that Lee was no longer human. The Dark Cha held the opening, letting Lee escape first, saying he would find his own way out. Yunyu saw her brother escape and without a second thought, jumped out of the moving car. She grabbed Lee as he was about to leave, but quickly realized the sergeant was right. This was no longer the brother who would risk his life to protect her. Elsewhere, number one went to Dr. Lim, threatening him to find a way to escape this body. Dr. Lim explained that the trigger was key, the point in time when each transfer occurred. Whether it was escaping Seo's fiancée's body or entering Wook's, number one was always on the verge of death. Perhaps danger was the key to his transfers. At this time, the sergeant and the others followed the sidekick man to the vicinity of the stadium, but couldn't act rashly without knowing the situation inside. The MH3 mutant saw the battered sidekick man return and quickly took him to report to number one. The sidekick man smugly claimed he had trapped Cha. He wasn't exactly lying, as the Dark Cha was indeed still inside the bus. Nearby, Lee was explaining to Yunyu that he was in the final stage of monsterization, a true new human. While he possessed past memories, he had no emotions. He learned quickly but had no capacity to feel. His different attitude towards Cha was because Cha was useful, whereas Yunyu was useless to him. Furthermore, Lee couldn't understand why they had to be connected when they weren't even blood siblings. Yunyu knew that explaining explaining further would be like talking to a brick wall, so she said no more and simply threw her brother's glasses at him. Back at the stadium, number 1 was preparing for self-immolation to trigger his near-death moment. Dr. Lim told Wook to seize this opportunity to capture the sidekick girl and retrieve the drug. Eager for the injection, Wook immediately used an anesthetic to knock out the sidekick girl. Hiding in the shadows, the boy saw this and tried to rescue Yisu, but the girl, now alone and helpless, desperately needed a companion. The next moment, she grabbed his wrist. When the sidekick man came to deliver food, he found they were gone. Since there was no sign of escape from the main gate, it meant she couldn't have gone far. Number 1 ordered everyone to be gathered together. The man with glasses unexpectedly spotted Yisu inside the stadium. At the same time, the fish-selling auntie noticed the boy was missing and called for Chief G's daughter to help her search. Hearing the broadcast summoning everyone, Dr. Lim quickened his pace. After the stadium residents had assembled, number 1 announced that any symptomatic person who survived 15 days without monsterizing could join them and gain abilities beyond ordinary humans. He added that his daughter could turn ordinary people into symptomatic ones. The problem was, Yisu was missing, so number 1 told everyone to find her, as it was the only way to become new humans. The man with glasses immediately began searching frantically. Elsewhere, Cha finally broke free. During his confinement, the Dark Cha realized that both saving Lee and being unable to harm Yunyu were things only Cha would do. Though he repeatedly denied that weaker personality, he was still a part of Cha. The two Chas finally merged, becoming the person Yunyu recognized. The first thing he did was give Lee a feather to use as a weapon. The three of them set off for the stadium. Looking at the two most important people in her life, Yunyu felt an indescribable sense of peace. If new humans were fast learners, then they could surely relearn human emotions. Unlike the warm atmosphere here, the sergeant was nervously deploying his forces. He had the Crow platoon change into civilian clothes to avoid the infectees' notice, disperse, and gather survivors at various designated points to await his signal. Tonight, they would lead all survivors out of the stadium. Meanwhile, to punish the special infectees for losing Yisu, number 1 ordered the MH3 mutant to kill the sidekick man and the sidekick girl. At the same time, Dr. Lim finally extracted the drug from the sidekick girl's abdomen. He asked Wook what number 1 was planning by gathering everyone. Wook replied that Yisu had run away and that she could supposedly turn people symptomatic. Dr. Lim instantly saw a glimmer of hope. He had always dreamed of becoming a special infectee, but could never develop symptoms. If Yisu could solve this problem, then this transformation drug had to be used on himself. Without a second thought, he swallowed the drug. The enraged Wook knocked him out with a single punch. He had more important matters to attend to and hurried back to his post, only to be stopped by Hani, who had snuck into the stadium. She explained that the sergeant and Park were nearby. Wook went to see number 1 first and exposed Dr. Lim's lie. In truth, only Seo's fiance's blood could turn a symptomatic person into a special infectee. It wasn't a matter of just surviving for 15 days. As expected, number 1 was furious, but the precious blood had already been consumed by Dr. Lim. After this, Wook went to find the sergeant, who was filled with guilt. If he had listened to Wook and not gone to Crow Island to find Corporal Choi, the muscle man and the others wouldn't have died so tragically. But Wook never blamed him and confessed his own infection. What's past is past. The most important thing now was to get the survivors out. Meanwhile, Yisu had transformed a large number of monsters and was preparing to seek revenge on her father. At the same time, Yunyu, still on the road, sensed something was wrong with her. She felt dizzy and was hearing voices, clear signs of monsterization. Unwilling to be a burden, she told Cha and Lee to go on without her. Though Cha was worried, he had no choice but to comply. Lee, indifferent, commented that if Yunyu became a monster, she could better protect herself. Hearing such a cold statement strengthened Cha's resolve. He had to save Seo and her daughter, bring back the real Lee, and then lead him back to his sister Yunyu. Elsewhere, Wook's subordinate was gathering survivors when he discovered the transformed monsters. He immediately turned and ran, unknowingly seen by Chief G's daughter, who was also searching. Yisu pushed aside her puppets and walked up to the fish-selling auntie. Just as she was about to transform her, a mass of green goo suddenly wrapped around her. The next moment, the fish-selling auntie recognized the boy. She wasn't afraid of the monster before her, but couldn't communicate with him. Just then, number 1 arrived. The auntie recognized Wook's face. He was the one who had risked his life to bring her daughter's body back to Green Home. But she didn't know someone else was inhabiting this body and was stabbed through the heart. The fish-selling auntie died right in front of the boy. The enraged Yisu swiftly summoned her puppets, but these minions were no match for number 1. Meanwhile, the MH3 mutant went to find the sidekick man as ordered, but he didn't want to kill him and told him to leave. The latter, furious at being abandoned, started kicking and punching an electrical box. Wook's group noticed the lights dimming and, fearing something was wrong, ordered Wook's subordinate and the sergeant to move out with the survivors. On their way out, they passed the scene of the fish-selling auntie's death. Park, looking at the collapsed infected, heard a familiar voice. He went over and found Chief G's daughter hiding in a corner. He stopped her from taking her own life and prepared to take her with them. At this moment, Number 1 dragged Dr. Lim to the fire. He ran his fingers over the doctor's body, pinpointed the general location of the drug, then pierced his abdomen, pulled out the vial, and crushed it underfoot. Even at death's door, Dr. Lim refused to give up, crawling to Yisu and begging her to transform him. But in the next second, Number 1 grabbed him and threw him into the roaring flames. Number 1 asked the MH3 mutant if he had dealt with the sidekick man and the sidekick girl. The latter lied without flinching. Number 1 unhesitatingly dispatched the MH3 mutant as well. He then took Yisu's hand, wanting to walk into the fire with her. Yisu stood her ground, refusing to move. But Number 1, now self-immolating, had successfully escaped Wook's body and entered Yisu's. By evening, Cha and Lee arrived to find the stadium empty. Even the sidekick girl, whose abdomen had been cut open, was gone. Lee judged from the blood spatter that special infectees had indeed been there. They continued forward and soon found the infectees transformed by Yisu, standing motionless like puppets. To be more efficient, Lee suggested they split up. Whoever found Number 1 first would deal with him. Cha went to check another direction and stumbled upon Yisu. He immediately asked where Seo was. Yisu promised to take him to her. Meanwhile, the survivors had assembled, and the Crow platoon was leading them toward the exit. The sergeant recognized a woman and gave her the medicine Corporal Choi had found, hoping she would live a little longer and not let Corporal Choi's sacrifice be in vain. As the group neared the exit, Wook began to have problems. He saw another version of himself standing at the end of the dark corridor, but when the figure approached, he realized it was a member from the advance team. Just as he breathed a sigh of relief, he coughed up a large amount of blood. He told the sergeant to lead everyone away and stumbled back. The next moment, his vision went black, and he pulled out a homemade explosive. The sergeant quickly grabbed him and told everyone to back away. He then forcefully pushed Wook away as a huge explosion erupted. When the smoke cleared, the sergeant saw Wook encased in a layer of ice, gradually merging with the wall. He had only ever wanted to be a soldier, and in the end, he didn't become a monster that harms people. Elsewhere, Lee entered an office and discovered a secret room behind a wall. A wave of infectees emerged, and he mercilessly killed them all. At the same time, Yisu led Cha to the bonfire. He asked her if she was the one who transformed the people in the stadium, and she admitted it. Cha finally realized something was wrong and demanded to know where Seo was. Yisu said she killed her mother. Looking into the girl's dark pupils, Cha recognized Number 1 hidden beneath the skin, but he believed Yisu hadn't completely vanished. She must be curled up in a corner of this body. Cha immediately entered Yisu's consciousness to bring her back. He found her trapped in a greenhouse. As he tried to pull the vines off her, Number 1, now in the form of Seo's fiancé, pulled him aside and began to choke him. At that critical moment, someone shattered the illusion. It was Lee who had pierced Yisu's shoulder, forcibly pulling them back to reality. Lee was about to deliver the final blow to kill Number 1, but was stopped by Cha, who wanted to force Number 1 out of Yisu's body first. Their struggle gave Number 1 the opportunity he needed. He stood up and summoned all the infectees in the stadium, surrounding Cha and Lee. Wielding the feather, Lee began to cut down the puppets. He felt no emotion, no guilt for slaughtering his own kind. Lee spotted Number 1 in the distance and was about to hurl his weapon, but Cha stopped him again. Lee pushed him aside and charged forward. Cha tried to follow but was blocked by the puppets. He beat his wing to drive them away but was immediately entangled by a bat-like monster. By now, Lee was in front of Yisu. He unhesitatingly threw his weapon. Number 1 extended a tentacle to counter, but unexpectedly, the Yisu within forced him to retract it. The feather pierced Yisu's body, driving Number 1 out. With a loud cry, Cha broke free from the bat monster. He returned to the ground and held the injured Yisu. The boy emerged from the shadows and pressed on the girl's wound. In truth, Yisu had planned to die with her father all along. She was too tired and just wanted to rest. By dying, she could see her mother again. With those words, she stopped breathing. The emotionless Lee pursued Number 1, only to find the surrounding puppets changing. Cha knew he would have to settle things with Lee eventually, but the priority now was to find Number 1. On the other side, Hani discovered that the gate formed by Wook could be passed through. She led everyone out of the stadium. However, when the sidekick man tried to pass, Wook stopped him. Even as a monster gate, he remembered his mission in life: never let a monster escape. The sergeant noticed someone standing motionless at the gate and realized something was wrong. He stepped forward and removed the sidekick man's hat. The latter was about to retaliate, but sensed the gate was protecting the sergeant. Just then, Park and the others arrived with the sidekick girl. Setting aside their past grievances, they didn't reject the special infectee. The sidekick girl told them to go on while she stayed to deal with the sidekick man. But having been abandoned by the MH3 mutant and attacked by his own kind, the sidekick man was filled with rage. He began to release a large amount of liquid metal. The sergeant grabbed a pipe and vaulted into the air, clamping onto the sidekick man's body from above and telling Park to get everyone out. The sidekick girl's body was at its limit. She extended her tentacles to cover the liquid metal, allowing Park and Chief G's daughter to escape by running across them. The sergeant took the opportunity to stuff a bomb into the sidekick man's mouth and kick him away. The sidekick girl used her tentacles to hold him down. The next second, the bomb exploded. The sergeant rolled across the gate to safety. The scene shifts back to Cha. Number 1 had entered the MH3 mutant's body and was walking out of the fire with his charred flesh. Cha tackled him and pierced the mutant's body with his wing, but Number 1 quickly escaped that vessel and fled again. Lee stated this method wouldn't work since Cha had to fight him every time he possessed a new body. Lee had a permanent solution. He could trap Number 1 inside his own body, walk into the fire, and hold on until the parasite was burned to death. Just then, Number 1 returned with Wook's body. He had come back to this vessel knowing Cha's weakness for him, but this time Cha clearly saw him as just a monster parasite. Before they could fight, Wook's body began to reject Number 1 again. Cha realized Wook was still alive. He dragged Number 1 inside him towards the fire pit. The flames finally consumed all evil. The deceased Yisu was suddenly revived. Meanwhile, Yunyu had returned to Green Home. She sat in her old apartment, her nose bleeding and her ears filled with a cacophony of noise. In her pain, she felt a warmth in her hand. It was her brother, holding her hand. Unable to tell if it was a hallucination or reality, she collapsed wearily into his arms. The next day, Cha returned to where he had parted with Yunyu, but she was long gone. He knew he had to find her. He then said goodbye to Lee, telling him not to wander too far, as he would come to see him after finding Yunyu. Lee took out a photo he carried with him, a picture of their family of 4. For the first time, he felt as if he had lost a precious ability. At the same time, the sergeant was leading the survivors in search of a new base. He had to take on Wook's responsibility and care for these lives. Cha suggested they check out Green Home. Along the way, they met many new humans and decided to take them to Green Home as well. Being with the new humans offered protection from monsters. Everyone started over at Green Home. One shot shows the boy holding a girl's hand. The tattoo on her hand suggests it's Yisu. It's likely Cha helped the boy return to his human form and brought Yisu to their new home. In the end, Cha pushes open the rooftop door and sees Lee and Yunyu again. Everything has returned to how it began, as if nothing had ever happened. The drama ends here, following its formula of multiple parallel storylines converging at the end. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.